and welcome back to a chapter day. Happy Sunday. It's late, it's in the evening time right now. It's after 6 o'clock, but I'm still within the day. Another beautiful day today that I just could not let go. So I was outside working in the yard again, making it look good for the spring, summer months, because when winter comes, hey, just like the Lord said, it's going to be a time when you can't work. It's going to be too cold. So now that God has sent us some beautiful days, let me make the best of them. So yesterday I had to double up because of that, because Friday I spent the day out doing some yard work. So today I'm on track, so I don't have to double up. But it is oh my gosh, it is a long chapter. So let's see how we do this. Okay, here goes. Chapter 13 of Leviticus. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, saying, When a man shall have in the skin of his flesh a rising, a scab, or bright spot, and it be in the skin of his flesh like the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought unto Aaron the priest, or unto one of his sons the priests. And the priest shall look on the plague in the skin of the flesh, and when the hair in the plague is turned white, and the plague inside be deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is a plague of leprosy. And the priest shall look on him and pronounce him unclean. If the bright spot be white in the skin of his flesh, and in sight be not deeper than the skin, and the hair thereof be not turned white, then the priest shall shut him up that hath the plague 7 days. And the priest shall look on him the 7th day, and behold, if the plague in his sight be at a stay, and the plague spread not in the skin, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days more. Wow. God gave all types of instructions for sickness, for the types of food to eat, the types of offerings to give. I mean, without saying. Here is about if someone has a plague of leprosy. I guess back in Bible days, there was a very high rise of leprosy, almost now like we have, but the common cold, but more deadly. I want to say COVID, but maybe COVID was like a one-time big breakout, but it seems like leprosy was an ongoing illness then. So God gave them special instructions for the priest to pronounce it to be leprosy, first of all, no false alarms, and then how to quarantine the people that had it. Quarantine is nothing new. We didn't invent quarantine. God did. I mean, with all the wisdom that is contained in God and his word. If we read God's word more, I think we'd be a lot wiser. Okay, verse 6. And the priest shall look on him again the 7th day, and behold, if the plague be somewhat dark, and the plague spread not in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is but a scab, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scab spread much abroad in the skin, after that he hath been seen of the priest for his cleansing, he shall be seen of the priest again. And if the priest see that, behold, the scab spreadeth in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprosy. When the plague of leprosy is in a man, then he shall be brought unto the priest, and the priest shall see him, and behold, if the rising be white in the skin, and have turned the hair white, and there be quick raw flesh in the rising, it is an old leprosy in the skin of his flesh, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean, and shall shut him up, for he is unclean. So again, instructions, you have to go before the priest. I guess you didn't go to a doctor first. The priest, because God gave them all the wisdom for everything, physical, mental, spiritual, everything was given to the priest. They were blessed and chosen of God, and they were the ones to pronounce leprosy unclean, or no leprosy, you're clean. Verse 12. And if a leprosy break out abroad in the skin, and the leprosy cover all the skin of him that hath the plague, from his head even to his foot, wheresoever the priest looketh, then the priest shall consider, and behold, if the leprosy have covered all his flesh, he shall pronounce him clean that hath the plague. It is all turned white, he is clean. But when raw flesh appeareth in him, he shall be unclean. And the priest shall see the raw flesh, and pronounce him to be unclean. For the raw flesh is unclean, it is a leprosy. Or if the raw flesh turn again, and be changed into white, he shall come unto the priest, and the priest shall see him, and behold, if the plague be turned white, then the priest shall announce him clean. That hath the plague, he is clean. The flesh also in which even in the skin thereof was a boil and is healed. And in the place of the boil there be a white rising or bright spot, white and somewhat reddish, and it be showed to the priest. And if when the priest seeth it, behold, it be in the sight lower than the skin, and the hair thereof be turned white, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague of leprosy broken out of the boil. Wow. Specific instructions. I know I lived in Hawaii for a while, and there was a colony on one of the islands where there were lepers. People used to go there. They were sent there. A lot of them were taken out of their homes because they wanted to stay with their families, but they had to isolate them, and they didn't live in very good conditions at all. I think they just took them there to die and keep them separated. And there was a priest that had worked with the lepers, and he himself, Father Damien, he contracted the leprosy disease, and he died. And they have a monument to him on the island of Oahu. But leprosy was a very contagious thing. I don't know how much leprosy is caught today, but I heard it's still alive in some places. Okay, so moving on to verse 21. But if the priest look on it, and behold, there be no white hairs therein, and if it be not lower than the skin, but be somewhat dark, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And if it spread much abroad in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague. But if the bright spot stay in his place and spread not, it is a burning boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or if there be any flesh in the skin, whereof there is a hot burning, and the quick flesh that burneth have a white bright spot, somewhat reddish or white, then the priest shall look upon it, and behold, if the hair in the bright spot be turned white, and it be in sight deeper than the skin, it is a leprosy broken out of the burning. Wherefore the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. So this is just to make sure that they don't isolate someone and call them unclean when it's not the plague. So the priest had specific things to look for. And leprosy is something, it's like I call it a fungus or fungal disease that eats away your flesh. And that's why they are saying if the flesh be lower, so that means it started eating the inside of your flesh already. But if it's raised, and then if the hair is white in it, yes, it's a leprosy. Whew, wow. Verse 26, but if the priest look on it, and behold, there be no white here in the bright spot, and it be no lower than the other skin, but be somewhat dark, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And the priest shall look upon him the 7th day, and if it be spread much abroad in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. And if the bright spot stay in his place, and spread not in the skin, but it be somewhat dark, it is a rising of the burning, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is an inflammation of the burning. If a man or woman have a plague upon the head or the beard, then the priest shall see the plague, and behold, if it be in the sight deeper than the skin, and there be in it a yellow thin hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a dry scald, even a leprosy upon the head or beard. And I don't know if you keep noticing, they keep allotting 7 days for quarantine at a time. 7 days, 7 days. I can't remember how many days they were saying that people needed to be quarantined for COVID-19. I believe it was 10, either 5 or 10, something like that, if I remember. But here in the Bible, it's 7 days at a time, and then you're checked again, and then if anything, you're another quarantined for another 7 days. Okay, verse 31. And if the priest look on the plague of the scald, and behold, it be not inside deeper than the skin, and that there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut him up, that hath the plague of the scald 7 days. And in the 7th day the priest shall look on the plague, and behold, if the scald spread not, and there be in it no yellow hair, so sorry. And the scald be not in sight, I hope I can get rid of that, deeper than the skin, he shall be shaven, but the scald shall he not shave, and the priest shall shut him up that hath the scald 7 days more. And in the seventh day the priest shall look on the skull, and behold, if the skull be not spread in the skin, nor be in sight deeper than the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the skull spread much in the skin after his cleansing, then the priest shall look on him, and behold, if the skull be spread in the skin, the priest shall not see. He is unclean. So there are ways for, again, for the priest to tell whether or not he's really and truly leprous. That means for 7 days, check, send him to quarantine, check again, and then again send him. And if the seventh, after second sets of time, 7 days allotted, then something is definitely amiss. It is leprosy. Verse 37, but if the skull be in his sight at a stay, and that there is black hair grown up therein, the skull is healed, he is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. If a man also or woman have in the flesh, skin of their flesh, bright spots, even white bright spots, then the priest shall look, and behold, if the bright spots in the skin of the flesh be darkish white, it is a freckle spot that groweth in the skin, he is clean. And the man whose hair is fallen off his head, he is bald, yet is he clean. So even though sometimes you might lose your hair, it's not just it's not leprosy, it's some other ailment that people might have had. Verse 41, and he that hath his hair fallen off from the part of his head to what his face, he is forehead bald, yet is he clean. And if there be in the bald head or bald forehead a white reddish sore, it is a leprosy sprung up in his bald head or his bald forehead. Then the priest shall look upon it, and behold, if the rising of the sore be white reddish in his bald head or in his bald forehead, as the leprosy appeareth in the skin of the flesh, he is a leprous man, he is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him utterly unclean. His plague is in his head. And the leper in whom the plague is, his clothes shall be rent, and his head bare, and he shall put a covering upon his upper lip, and shall cry, unclean, unclean. So that's why sometimes in the movies you see them wearing these kind of veils and hoods, and they draw the veil across their mouth so that maybe they don't spread the disease from talking, from, saliva, maybe. My gosh. Whew, terrible, dreadful disease. Sin is like disease. It's like a plague, honestly. Keeps eating away at you till it just totally destroys you, unless you get washed in the blood of Christ. Verse 46, all the days wherein the plague shall be in him, he shall be defiled, he is unclean, he shall dwell alone, without the camp shall his habitation be. The garment also that the plague of leprosy is in, whether it be of a woolen garment or linen garment, whether it be in the warp or woof or linen or of woolen, whether in a skin or in anything made of skin. And if the plague be greenish or reddish in the garment or in the skin, either in the warp or in the woof or in anything of the skin, it is a plague of leprosy, and shall be showed unto the priest. And the priest shall look upon the plague, and shut up it that hath the plague 7 days. Again. Verse 50, and the priest shall look upon the plague, verse 51, and he shall look on the plague on the 7th day, if the plague be spread in the garment, either in the warp or in the woof or in a skin or in a work that is made of skin, the plague is a fretting leprosy, it is unclean. He shall therefore burn that garment, whether warp or woof, in woolen or in linen or anything of skin, wherein the plague is. For it is a fretting leprosy, it shall be burnt in the fire. And if the priest shall look, and behold, the plague be not spread in the garment, either in the warp or in the woof or in anything of skin, then the priest shall command that they wash the thing wherein the plague is, and he shall shut it up 7 days more. And the priest shall look on the plague after that it is washed, and behold, if the plague have not changed its color, and the plague be not spread, it is unclean. Thou shalt burn it in the fire, it is fret inward, whether it be bare within or without. Once again, look carefully, check even the clothing, because I don't know if you've ever had a sore, maybe as a child growing up, and you got a bruise and it turned into a sore, and it gets really messy, and it's sometimes you put your clothes on without putting on a band-aid, and it clings to the clothing, and it's spread, I guess I'm picturing that while I am reading. Maybe it's something like that, but if it really spreads throughout the garment, maybe that's how they can tell whether or not it's leprosy. Verse 56, and if the priest look and behold, the plague be somewhat dark after the washing of it, then he shall rend it out of the garment, or out of the skin, or out of the warp, or out of the woof. And if it appear still in the garment, either in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything of skin, it is a spreading plague. Thou shalt burn that wherein the plague is with fire. And the garment, either warp or woof, or whatsoever thing of skin it be, which thou shalt wash, if the plague be departed from them, then it shall be washed the second time, and shall be clean. This is the law of the plague of leprosy in a garment of woolen or linen, either in the warp or woof, or anything of skins, to pronounce it clean, or to pronounce it unclean. Wow. Quite a job for the priest. I'm telling you, no easy task to be a priest back then. You had to be like you had to be like officiating for religious ceremonies, making decisions for cleanliness and for illnesses, oh my gosh. It was quite a task. So you really had to have a calling. Oh, well, that's the end of chapter 13 for today. And wow, that's quite, I know we don't have that widespread problem of leprosy anymore, but like I said, there are some places that still have it. And maybe if people read the Bible, they might be able to know how to deal with it better. People do need to be isolated for some illnesses, like when we had the COVID, we had to wear masks, like how they, in the days for leprosy, they had to cover their heads, cover their mouths and all that stuff, and cry unclean, unclean as they move, so people know to get out of the way, because I guess it was a highly contagious illness, because if it gets in your clothes touch someone, it could spread. Oh my gosh. Wow. How awful. The illnesses that have come into this world, God only knows how. But by the blood of Christ, we are saved, and I thank God for providing a way through every horrific setback that people on earth have to deal with. God is merciful. So until our next reading, I thank you again for viewing, for listening. Thank you for whatever comments or thoughts that you may have. And I pray that you have a wonderful week as your week has started again. For those who go out into the workplace, enjoy it, and may God continue to bless you. Faith comes by hearing God's word. Until, bye.